Hey there, you're about to watch a quick clip from Marketing O'Clock. If you're looking for more digital marketing news and really bad puns, make sure you like and subscribe to us here on YouTube or catch our famous Friday news show wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, and this week's Take of the Week comes from Rand Fishkin, at RandFish on Twitter. And there's a tweet that he had out that said, "What if performance advertising is just a scam?" And I think the name of the title of the article got changed, or at least says it's an analytic scam. But the tweet says scam, so I'm going with that.
Can't edit a tweet.
You cannot. And I don't know for sure if it was edited. I just thought at one point it said scam. Maybe I just read the tweet. And I'm just going to read the definition of performance marketing because that's what it's referenced to many times in the article, even though obviously advertising is the paid media.
And if you're not watching, this might be the first Take of the Week where Greg has come prepared with hard copy notes.
I got the documents.
Usually those are just for shooting the heck.
I know. Well, there's so much to unpack. And then we've got a lot of folks chiming in. People are fired up about this take. So anyway, I'm just reading from the Performance Marketing Association what performance marketing is. And it is a comprehensive term that refers to online marketing and advertising programs in which advertisers and marketing companies are paid when a specific action is completed, such as a sale, lead, or a click. So everyone makes sense? And then this is about the advertising side of it, not criticizing the marketing side. And so first up, I would be remiss if I don't talk about Augustin Fu, who is one of the leading, I'd say, forensic folks on ad fraud. And he chimed in and responded. So before I talk about Rand's take, I'm just going to read. And before we even do this, I'm going to talk about biases quick, right? I work at a company that is performance marketing or performance advertising. That's mainly what I do. So I have bias. I don't know if Dr. Augustin Fu does, but he has an analytics platform where he looks to uncover ad fraud. So that's what he does. And then Rand works on what I believe is SparkToro. It's a tool that does not have anything to do with advertising. It's about finding sort of your tribe and finding people, influencers in a space. So his is geared towards more non-advertising, or at least non-traditional performance advertising. Maybe it's influencer marketing or influencer advertising if you're paying them. Does that make sense? Anything?
Yes.
Incorrect?
I'm with you so far.
Okay. So Dr. Fu had responded, and just to start, I'm gonna read what he said. He said, "I agree with Randfish," and he links over to how fraudsters cheat by tricking the reporting to look awesome, which I agree with. And then he says, "The algos are optimizing for Google and Facebook's profitability, not for the marketers' business outcomes. As long as marketers remain fixated on large quantities of ads, low CPM prices, and high click rates, they continue to voluntarily be ripped off by ad tech companies." Agree to all of that. I don't think anybody can disagree with that, right? Okay, and in the article, Rand covers a few different things. Brand search, social ads. And when I say brand search, I mean brand search ads, right? And also ad fraud. And I just want to say, I'm going to take ad fraud out of this, right? There's ad fraud that happens. And if you're somebody that's only looking at CPM, only looking at click-through rate, and you're buying ads on that scale, that is a problem, right? And I don't really think CPM is the tool of a performance marketer in my mind. I think you're paying for the clicks, you're going towards conversions. Generally, CPMs make it hard when you're buying that.
But if you want it, it's on Bing.
Yes, it is now. Thank you, Shep. So anyway, I'm going to break this article down. It might go a little bit long. Feel free to skip through if you don't care. But he starts off with the Airbnb example, where in 2020, Airbnb cut $542 million of performance advertising spend. It saw no measurable fall off in attributable sales. This is the thing we hear a lot, and Airbnb is a little bit different. They are a name like Xerox and Kleenex, and they got there, and I would imagine performance advertising helped them get there. And I don't like this example. I'm not even going to reference it. He had a good example about a pizza store and handing out flyers from red. One flyer was red, one was white, and one was green, and all the greens were like actually converting. So they went out to go look at the stop, and the green person was standing outside the door handing it to people coming in. And I thought that's a great example for the retargeting side of things, which is clearly one small portion of performance advertising. And so that one thing he said too, he said, "Some are convinced that's exactly how a majority of so-called performance advertising channels work. That the lesson is simple. Advertise to those already primed to buy, and you'll see a phenomenal return on advertising investment without any sales lift." That is not what I think of when you think of performance advertising. That's what I think of when you think of remarketing or brand search. And I think that's a clear distinction in my mind is like, yeah, if you're going out and you're buying something to do with a certain piece of software that is unbranded, that has nothing to, there's no intent to buy from that company. So I would agree with them that, yeah, remarketing and brand search falls in that bucket, but everything else doesn't fall into that bucket, right? And I think that's one issue. Another thing he talked about was seeing a notebook that he had visited the site for and then got an ad for. And he was saying, well, it was already on my mind anyway. Should Facebook really get credit for this? And I get it. Yeah. You should look at the metrics that matter to you and how you find folks. Just because Facebook is saying that it drove a click that then turned into a conversion, you should take that with a grain of salt. You should look at your analytics package, come up with an attribution model that matches your audience. Maybe you're looking at it and weighting 70% first. I just did this huge analysis and forecasting, and I was looking at 70% first click, 20% middle clicks, and 10% for that last click. Should that attribution for that ad that brought them back and sold the book be worth 10%? I don't know. I don't know what that answer is, right? But yeah, it shouldn't take credit for the whole thing. I totally agree with them. And I think the intent of this article is really good. And then it kind of goes awry in a few other spots. So one other thing I wanted to read from the article was he said, determining whose ads to show and where has been the pursuit of a generation's best educated, best page knowledge workers for 2 decades. So color me completely unsurprised that Google and Facebook can tell you with absolute certainty that 72% of people who purchased on your website saw the ads you ran on their networks 3.37x times before conversion. The trouble is whether those 3.37 views actually modified the purchase behavior of that 72%. Seen? Yes. Modified behavior? If Facebook and Google were really that effective at modifying behavior, wouldn't we all be QAnon cultists by now? And I kind of lost it at that point there. But could it impact behavior? If you click on it, I would say this impacting behavior should count as 100%. No, you've been on the site. And again, I think that's where he's going with it. I don't really get the example, or at least the QAnon part. Okay, and then another thing that he stated was, here we come, the second half of performance advertising pitch. Those perfectly timed, perfectly targeted ads will influence more people to buy your product than it would have without them. And he still appears to be talking about remarketing, which is a slice of the performance marketing pie. And he says, on this part, I don't believe the ad networks. And when it comes to remarketing, there's different kinds of remarketing, right? It's not just the same product over and over. You might say somebody downloaded a top of funnel content asset that you had, but didn't sign up for a demo. Maybe you're then saying, hey, book your demo. You're bringing them back, something of that nature. That's remarketing. That's retargeting. And that is very specific. So I don't like these generalities and lumping everything together. And I don't like taking remarketing and considering it all of performance advertising. I think that's unfair. And then he says, herein lies the scam. I'm not saying no one buys because of retargeting display branded search ad. I'm saying somewhere between 60 and 99% of the people exposed to those ads would have purchased anyway. And this doesn't have any
how
stats.
did you get that number? Yeah.
I have no clue. Everything is linked to here. We're going to get some of the links. There's no link here. So I think this is just saying that what he's saying is that 60 to 99% of people would have bought it anyway.
Because he thinks so.
That's what I read from it. I don't know. Okay. So, and then he goes on to say, the ad platforms know this. Many of the ad buyers even know this, but because the platforms have no incentive to make incrementality clear, ad buyers look at their analytics and think, I should spend more on performance marketing. No good ad buyer does that. No. Those are bad ad buyers. Nobody's gonna be like, oh, we need more remarketing. Like, no, if you have a brain in your head, you know that you only have a finite number of people that are on your site to remarket to. They don't just appear every day. You can't just raise that budget. Like that's where I think he's too tied up into some of the remarketing side of things. Anyway, I'm going to keep running through here, and we're going to hear from Sam Tomlinson on a take from the line, call.marketing clock if you ever want your own take. Take it away, Sam.
So Rand's article gets some things right and some things really wrong and probably confused. What he gets right is starting a conversation about advertising efficacy and incrementality, about, understanding what's actually contributing, and probably a little bit about how platforms have misaligned incentives to advertisers. What he gets wrong, and I think the critical part of this, is understanding time horizons, impact, and the other contributing factors and confounding factors that really drive the results of advertising. Is all advertising effective? No. I don't think anyone's ever claimed that. Is performance advertising a scam? No. That's also ridiculous. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and it depends on your brand and your goals to determine if it works for you. So what do I mean by your brand and your goals? Performance advertising likely works better for smaller brands, for D2C brands, for upstarts, for groups that don't have a robust user base. For a large brand like Airbnb, probably doesn't have a super large impact, and especially is not going to have a super large impact if you stop it today. Like, Airbnb is a verb. They don't need performance advertising, although maybe it might be helpful to prevent them from going the way of eBay, who was once upon a time the 9,000-pound gorilla and has since gone on a massive diet and now is like a little chimpanzee that no one cares about because they got left behind. So is performance advertising a scam? Probably not. Is it perfect? Definitely not. Do we need to get better at measurement? Absolutely. Is incrementality a conversation we should be having? Great. But seems a little disingenuous to say it is a scam.
All right. And that's a good point. And then I'm going to jump back over to Rand's article here, where he says, in the last few years, we've seen hundreds of stories about cutting off millions in ad spend with no discernible business impact. I haven't heard hundreds of stories.
I've heard like 2.
And I'm like, oh, cool. He's got links for all these. There's links to search ads, retargeting, programmatic. And I'm like, oh, this, I'm actually
all Airbnb.
No, I was actually curious to like see what this is. So I clicked on the Reddit one here that he said, Reddit ads _ because I don't think many people click these ads. This is from PPC Reddit. Look, what do you mean? This is literally what he links
That's
to.
the source.
There's a 1 upvote on this, and it says opinion. A lot of people waste a lot of money on retargeting.
1 upvote.
That's 1 upvote. So I'm like, it can't be this bad. Again, there were a couple about, it seemed like an agency didn't know how to use Google Ads, to be honest, and got a little bit burned, and they kind of said it, and that was the Google Ads one. And I'm going to read what he linked into from LinkedIn Ads, and this is from Mardan Kurlani, and he said, this is the conclusion. He says, in a nutshell, after spending $100 on each LinkedIn and Facebook for same duration, what I can conclude is Facebook had given me 100 leads, whereas LinkedIn had given 60 leads. However, only one converted, only 2 out of 100 for Facebook and 3 out of 60 for LinkedIn.
How is that even possible?
How did I know you could only spend that sounds good to me. Like, you got that many leads at $100?
I don't believe
you can't even get that many clicks for $100 on LinkedIn.
So anyway, I look at this and I don't know. Maybe there are hundreds of stories. I've not seen the hundreds of stories he's seen. Maybe he has better vision than me, though, to be fair. All right. And then he goes on to talk about the benefits of performance advertising, undeniably beautiful attribution. And this is a phenomenal point. It is easy to put money where you can see it come back. And he goes on to say, ads are easy to execute. They're even easier to scale. Other growth marketing investments, not so much. I would argue that good ads aren't that easy to build, and to scale are not that easy. Again, if you're just looking at last touch and retargeting, yeah, 100%. That is not performance advertising, just to get that going. All right. And another thing that Sam said is misaligned, I think, about the ad platforms. And Rand says, the platforms have immense incentive to deliver numbers, proving their delivery of your ad was key to any and every conversion or visit for which they can possibly take credit. And again, Sam said misaligned. I think that's what they have to do. If you are buying a Facebook ad and you get a click from Facebook and Facebook sees that pixel was fired on a conversion, Facebook can't see other advertisers. That's on you to have an analytics person and be like, hey, look at the analytics. What is Facebook saying they got a conversion? What does that mean for the full customer journey? If you're sitting there and like, oh, like everything came from Facebook because they're saying it. No, Facebook doesn't talk to Google. Google's going to report what it can see. Facebook's going to report what it can see. LinkedIn's going to report what it can see. All together, those are going to be more than your actual numbers because they don't talk to each other. You need an analytics platform to do that. And then it's on you to say, oh, you know what? Facebook's actually worth this amount. And so instead of saying, I'm going to try to get that CPA of 100, like, oh, I'm going to get it for $10 or something like that. So again, they don't have access to other people's data. And if they see a click come through that platform, they can't see anybody else out there. So they can't see Google search data. Google doesn't share that with Facebook. So Facebook has to do that. And I understand it's not perfect, but that's on you to be a good marketer, hire a good company, a good agency to do it.
I would clap for you, but I don't know that would translate.
Okay.
Good audio.
All right. And then he says those same platforms have equally immense incentives to squelch any organic channel data, hence Facebook, Google, and the rest hiding referral strings, organic keywords that send traffic, and putting loads on what could have and should have attribution to the dark social buckets. I'd say, again, some things like Facebook literally can't see. Google, 100%. You look at the attribution models, when you do it, they have one like last Google ads click. Like you're putting that in there to make Google ads look better. I 100% agree on that. All right. And then he says, now let me make the case for turning off ads entirely to get data on the incrementality of marketing. And he says, one of the things is you might lose out to the competition, quote, or parentheses, not likely, but possible, end parentheses. And I would just say that is something that's very dangerous. There's nobody in the world that hates branded search more than I do. I hate the fact that Google lets people bid on your brand. Google should not allow it. It should be back like 2007 when they frowned upon it. You couldn't do it unless you're on Microsoft. And that should be the way it is. But it's not. Your competitors can come and eat your dinner and eat your lunch. And that's because Google wants more money. There's no other way around it. And so should you turn off your branded search? No, don't do that. I know that you should report on it differently. You should look at that as a different, one is prospecting and one is like, sustaining. That could be like, hey, it's branding, it's remarketing, it's people already know us, it's our current clientele, and others new business. Go do that, but don't turn off your ads completely. Like think through it and look at what does the best for you. And if somebody's bidding on your name, unfortunately, that's the rules. That's reality on reality's terms, and there's nothing I can do about that. All right, and then PPCKirk called in at PPCKirk on Twitter. Here you go.
Hey, PPCKirk here. So overall, I think this was a great article. I think that the premise of the article stands, and that is that we need to identify incrementality in our advertising. So we're not just chucking money at the wall. We want our marketing to be as beneficial as possible. I agree with the premise of the article. That being said, I think there were two significant issues with the article that actually weaken Rand's premise. So the first being, I think that Rand too often conflated remarketing with performance marketing. So he would use the phrase performance marketing, but a lot of times he's talking about these ads that kind of reappear and reappear and reappear, which is a specific segment of performance marketing, remarketing, which yes, we definitely need to talk about and think about that. That's completely separate from the overall way that paid media is used in performance marketing. All right, and then the second core issue that I had with the article, although overall I thought the premise of the article was good, the second core issue I had was I don't think Rand is allowing for incrementality in purchase intention in a consumer buying journey. And what I mean by that is, like, until the money's in the bank, then it doesn't really matter how much intention that person has, right? So Rand kind of completely wipes away benefit of performance marketing by saying, well, the person was already going to purchase, but the person hadn't purchased yet. And so I think it's unfair to claim an ad has full attribution when it is the one that leads to a sale. But I think it's also unfair to claim it has no attribution, right? Because there is some compounding thing that helps lead people over time to bring just the right thing in front of someone that causes them to buy. And I think that's an important part of marketing.
Exactly. And I think that's a fair take, right? Like that's a fair take. So another example that Rand has later on in the article is about William Sonoma cast iron skillet. And just of note, like I'm agree. I don't like shopping ads for your brand stuff, but if other competitors come up, you kind of have to do it. And this example, yeah, take out Williams-Sonoma, block that, and block branded, and really just report on them differently. And I think it'll be eye-opening as to how you actually drive real sales. And then he goes on to talk about an Exasol ad for BI Performance Dashboard and how it loses nothing if I ever purchase a subscription to this display ad he saw. And he says, technically, it's still a brand impression. The brand marketers can say 4,219 tech CEOs saw our ads and we're gaining mind share. That's not performance marketing. Right? And then he says, but if I ever do convert, having this ad somewhere in my browsing history also makes their performance marketing team look like geniuses. Again, if you're looking at the wrong attribution models, then yeah, an attribution is hard. But if it's a longer conversion process, like you should look at where people first found you in that case. Anyway, he goes on to say, most marketers I know believe that a majority of performance marketing, especially in areas like branded search, social, and retargeting, deliver only a small amount of incrementality and cost an awful lot. How do you throw social in with retargeting
He hasn't
and
said
branded?
anything about it.
You're saying like if I go out there and I put a content offer on LinkedIn and I get somebody to learn about something, that is the same as retargeting or branded? This is where like it starts falling apart in my mind.
Mhm.
Again, I think the intent of this article is 10 out of 10. You should look at what matters. You should not just focus on the very last touch, and you should consider other stuff that's harder. I 100% agree with that. And then he says, getting clients, teams, and managers who happily spend on low ROI ads to switch to potentially high ROI, but hard to measure channels like content, PR, email, organic search, organic social, influence marketing, etc. is like pulling teeth. I don't think it's ever hard to switch somebody from low ROI. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like, hey, we've got this stuff that doesn't work well and we want to do something else. Like, let's do that. And then, is it hard to measure email and organic search and social media? Like, that seems easy to measure, right? Like PR, that's hard.
That's
Yeah.
hard.
And like, I would also argue that's not high ROI. Nobody's ever been like, hey, high ROI PR. Like, that's like an oxymoron. Anyway, there's a whole lot more to it. And I'm going to finish up here. He says, my contention is that most marketers and brands could benefit from similarly risky experimental bets on hard to track, hard to execute organic marketing investments. Most could, with a disciplined, willing to fail approach, redirect 2/3 or more of their digital ad spend and over time win bigger boosts to demand with lower costs. And I don't know where these stats come from, but I would agree with him that many fantastic ideas get shut down because they're too much of a moonshot or because they can't be proven out. And if you read anything from this article, don't take away the fact that performance advertising is evil or bad or ineffective or anything like that. Take these nuggets away from it to try and test new things here. And I'm also going to kick it over to Sam. Again, he's got a little rant here. Take it away, Sam.
The other point I'm going to make about Rand's article is I think he misses a critical piece that is marketers who do things like PR and SEO and even influencers to some extent have themselves in part to blame for this conversation because they have failed for decades to adapt to a reality in which C-suite executives are demanding financial accountability for investments. Performance marketers, correctly, incorrectly, somewhat loosely, whatever, have adapted to that reality. HR has adapted to that reality. Product has adapted to that reality. And they translate what they're doing into dollars and cents outcomes. PR people are like, we got you coverage. Big deal. Who cares? What did it do? So if you want to make the claim that these things are more valuable, you need to invest in the tools and the methods to demonstrate that value. And if you can't quantify that value in dollars and cents, then don't go crying when your budget gets cut. That's how this works.
All right. And thank you, Sam. We've got one more caller here weighing in on the topic here. There's
I know we don't get a
We never
voicemail
get
for
calls.
6 months, and we got
all at
3.
once, right?
But this is what it takes is like a hot take like this, you know?
And we're going to hear from fan favorite Azeem. So take it away, Azeem, from the Azeem Digital Ass podcast.
Hello, it's Azeem. A couple of points I want to make on this super quick. I think it's great, the examples of Airbnb that is used a lot about turning off ads and not seeing any change. Because they're Airbnb, I've seen very little or few stories about SMBs turning off paid advertising and seeing similar results. When I see more stories like that, I'm more likely to believe it. I think overall, Rand makes a couple of good points. I think the point about attribution has always been a problem for marketers, but the pandemic has forced that lower down in people's priorities as sort of budgets are cut and priorities are shifted. But most importantly, I think the big thing here to focus on is podcast advertising. Trial that. Sad that it wasn't mentioned, but if you think about this, 70% of people who are super listeners of podcasts consider a new product or service based on ads they hear. Test it, test it, test it.
That is great advice. Spend more on podcasts, advertise away. And if you're looking, you got a couple extra bucks you're looking to spend, I know a great one. You can see all about it over on www.IamAzeemDigital.com.